Since the start of Russia's invasion, Ukraine's museums, galleries and cultural institutions have been scrambling to protect their collections. Many have been taken away and shipped abroad, but this is becoming increasingly difficult. Heavy shelling has already caused considerable damage, so museum workers are staying behind to save what's left.
A nation's heritage packed up in boxes. The Andrey Sheptytsky National Museum in Lviv is Ukraine's largest art museum. Its doors have been closed since the Russian invasion began. The museum already survived World War II, but whether it will survive this one unscathed is unclear. Its extensive collections are being packed away into the cellar.
You
know, it's so bitter for my soul. Sometimes tears are coming. I'm telling the truth, because a lot of work has been put in here by our staff. It takes time, energy, and when you do something good, you feel pleasure. Today, you see empty walls. This makes you feel bitter, sad, so sad. You know, we didn't believe it till the last minute that this could happen. Many of the city's sculptures have been carefully cloaked in foam wrap. Maybe a futile attempt to protect them, but better than doing nothing at all. We are well aware that we're not able to protect them from direct impact, but from any light damage that may occur, from shelling, shock waves, small fragments or shrapnel. We're just trying everything we can. Empty walls at the museum in Lviv. As this new chapter of Ukraine's history begins, hope and grief are constant companions.
Well, let's talk about that with our culture desk. Karen Helmstedt is here. Karen, what we're seeing here is an attempt by Putin to wipe out the Ukrainian identity and culture. It goes much, much further than a couple of paintings and sculptures. What's at stake here?
The list is too long to even talk about in this interview, Ben, but I can start with the fact that Ukraine is home to 7 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in places like Lviv, Chernovitzy, which we saw earlier, and, for example, right in Kiev with sites like the Pesharsk Lavra Cave Monastery. That's an incredible complex, or the famous St. Sophia Cathedral. Both of those sites date back to the 11th century, so very rich history there. UNESCO is incredibly concerned, of course, and will be holding a special session next week to talk about what damage is happening. There are also countless other churches, so things like a wealth of icons, liturgical artifacts, sacred texts are at stake, but also many things like frescoes and mosaics, the buildings themselves, of course, that can't be carried away. There are museums with very impressive modern and contemporary art collections and archaeological finds, a great many, which aren't only in danger of destruction and damage, but also of looting by Russian troops, as many fear exactly what you're talking about, this wiping out. Most shocking of all, perhaps, was also as you know, the missile attack on the TV tower, where the Babin Yar Holocaust Memorial adjacent to it was also affected. 5 people killed in that attack. I mean, it really is the full spectrum of Ukrainian culture and identity itself that's under threat. And there is great fear that Russia will try to simply wipe it out.
Tell us more about why these sites and works are so important.
Well, the Pesharsk Lavra Cave Monastery, for instance, is an active monastery. There are over 100 monks actually in residence there. But together with the St. Sophia Cathedral, for instance, these are very important sites for Eastern Orthodox Christianity, which is the predominant religion in both Russia and Ukraine, and of course much of Eastern Europe. Both of them date back to something called the Kievan Rus Empire, which converted to Christianity back in 988. And that was literally the foundation for the modern nations of Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine today. Now, the Arsenal Mitsitsky Museum in Kiev is home to many, many works of artists that are hugely important also for Europe's shared artistic traditions. art history. Just to name a couple of the artists, Kazimir Malevich, of course, is very well known, Vasily Yermilov, Alexander Bogomazov. These are important Ukrainian figures of modernism and the avant-garde who, of course, had a great influence on other European painters and traditions.
What can we do? What can the art world do to help in this circumstance? Yeah,
we're all feeling very helpless at the moment, but officials museum officials in Kiev and in Ukraine, for instance, like Olesia Ostrovska, who's director of that Mitsetsky Arsenal that I just mentioned, they say that it's really essential to remind people that this war is going to have an absolutely global impact. It's going to affect everything. This is an attack on all of our democratic values, obviously, as we realize. But she's urging institutions in the West to inform people actively about this war in their events and to share their information and educate as much as possible and read Ukrainian literature.
Karen Helmser, thank you very much for talking on this extremely important topic. We're talking about not just paintings, but also the entire culture of these
Ukrainian
people.
Identity and a very shared history
Exactly,
for Europe.
Exactly. Yeah. Very good point. Thank you, Karen.
We'll talk more about it. Thanks, Ben.